It's Torah Tuesday, and today we're in Exodus chapter 3, thinking again about the identity of Moses. In a previous episode, I talked about how Moses' identity is in question and how the type scene at the well, where Moses meets his future wife, helps to highlight the ambiguity of his own identity. So here in chapter 3, we have an encounter between Yahweh and Moses, and it's at this juncture that Moses finds out who he truly is. In verse 6, Yahweh appears to Moses, and he calls him, and then he identifies himself. Without even being asked, he says, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Now this is interesting because it's slightly different than every other place where this same sort of stock introduction is used. We hear lots of times about Yahweh as the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But here, father is singular. I am the God of your father. And I wonder, which father? When Moses hears this sentence, I am the God of your father, what goes through his mind? Moses' birth father was only mentioned in passing in chapter 2, and he wasn't even named. It was his birth mother, his sister, and his adoptive mother who saved his life. The narrator has never explicitly noted any kind of bond with a father figure in the palace. He's adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh. Is she married? We don't even know. Therefore, in this one statement, God is not only clarifying the divine identity, but Moses as well. It is of the utmost importance for Moses to know who he is before he returns to Egypt. And so God goes on to say, he doesn't stop with, I am the God of your father, and leave Moses wondering. He fills in the blank. What does he mean, the God of your father? Moses has had two virtually absent fathers in terms of the narrative. And so there's this big question mark hanging over him about where he belongs. But now God tells him, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That the God of your father is indeed the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob connects Moses to the covenantal promises that were passed on from generation to generation. While Moses struggles with his own identity, God knows him and speaks to him from that place of knowing. He's the God of Abraham, who lost patience with God's promise and tried to produce descendants in his own way. He's the God of Isaac, whose favoritism and passivity with his sons created the conditions in which treachery could flourish. He's the God of Jacob, the trickster, who eyed everyone around him with suspicion, even God. Moses is no hero, at least not yet. But God reminds Moses that he can use anyone, and that what matters most is his promise that passes on from generation to generation. As the chapter unfolds, we'll notice in verses 13 and 15 and following that whenever Moses and God are talking about what Moses will say to the people when he gets to Egypt, he will consistently say, the God of your fathers has appeared to me. In other words, Moses may not be accepted right away as one of them, but the important thing is that Yahweh has told him who he is. His identity is no longer in question. He knows beyond the shadow of a doubt who he is and where he belongs. Do you know who you are? Do you know whose you are? That was my heart in writing this book, Bearing God's Name, Why Sinai Still Matters. Sinai still matters because that's the place where Yahweh reveals who he is and who his people are. What does it mean to be the people of God? And so if that's something that you wrestle with, if you wrestle with your identity and your sense of belonging, I would encourage you to pick up a copy and read it. And my hope is that you would be transformed because you would know deep down inside who you are. If we live out of that sense of our true identity as a child of God, it changes everything. Have a great week.